I love writing comedy because my kids love going to expensive schools.
That's great.
So let's bring in Hollywood divorce attorney David Glass for more on this. David,
People going through divorces are going through some of the hardest times of their lives, and a lot of what they're going through is emotional. And in any divorce, there's a huge sense of loss, and loss of relationship, of money, some friends.
Hi, I'm David Glass, host of the HourGLASS Podcast. Our next guest is one of the most fascinating guests I think we've ever had on the show. Andy Robin. He went from comedy writing to psychiatry, and now he does both. I can relate, since many of you know I went from psychology to family law, two vastly different occupations. Along with his writing partner, Gregg Kavet, Andy wrote 32 episodes of Seinfeld between 1993 and 1998. He's written and produced films too, including Live Free or Die, B-Movie, and most recently, Unfrosted, which was nominated for an Emmy. Along the way, Andy also wrote for Saturday Night Live, and he helped to create The Michael Richards Show. He even wrote a book, Saving Face, about dealing with some of life's most awkward moments using comedy. And the cover of that book includes a note from Larry David, where he says, "If I knew that Andy and Greg were this smart, I never would have fired them from Seinfeld." Andy is a father of two and lives in Providence, Rhode Island with his wife and sometimes writing partner, Anna, and their two Havanese dogs. I have lots of questions for Andy, so let's get started.
Dr. Glass,
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Good. Funny that you call me Dr. Glass. I was going to ask you, do people still call you Dr. Robin, other than when you're
Only my kids and wife.
right? That's the line
No,
I give judges. Every once in a while, a judge will say, "Should I call you Mr. Glass or Dr. Glass?" And I say, "Only my mother calls me Dr. Glass because she's still holding out hope that I'm going to go back to being a doctor." But
Okay. Well, I guess so some patients call me Dr. Robin, which is fine. You want to give them the full smorgasbord, give them the full experience.
right.
So yeah, but not a lot of people in my life, unless they're just kind of kidding with me,
Sure. So
ribbing.
I have plenty of questions for you, but first, let's talk about what's the crossover between being a comedy writer and producer, and then moving into psychiatry and then coming back.
Well, psychiatry can be practiced in a zillion different ways. I guess for me, there wasn't a lot of crossover for me. It was more um, we had moved to Providence, Rhode Island from Los Angeles, and it was really hard to keep up the writing thing from Providence. I wasn't as big a name or a talent as like a Bill Goldman.
Right.
So I couldn't live anywhere, and we liked Providence. It seemed like a nice place to raise kids. We were living on College Hill, watching all these students go by, and I have a little bit of an academic personality. I thought I want to go back to school. Going to medical school seemed interesting. It seemed like uh, it could lead to a lot of different things. You could go into clinical work, research, business. It was just interesting to me.
Mhm.
And I wanted to, as a writer, you're just spitting stuff out of your head. And you only have so many good stories that you can remember and
Right.
you've put a lot of those into scripts.
Mhm.
So my brain was feeling like it was getting emptier and I wanted to start putting stuff in. So I thought I'll go to medical school. It'll be easier to sell my wife Anna on medical school
Mhm.
than maybe some other professions. Um, and that led to and medical school was interesting and fun. I enjoyed that. And then psychiatry had a couple of things going for it. One was it seemed at the time like the hours might be better.
Mhm.
I was worried about doing a ton of overnights, especially as a resident, 4 years of like medical residency. I didn't know if I'd be able to get through those overnights. Turns out that was wrong. Psychiatry has just as many overnights. Everybody goes nuts in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And that's when they need the residents to man the fort. So that was a stupid bet. That was a bad bet. But I also liked reading, like I was into sports psychology, pop psychology, um, inner game of tennis, and this this performance psychologist Saul Miller. I just liked those guys a lot, and I loved reading stuff like that. And I thought, well, maybe I can morph this into like psychiatry, use this in psychiatry. So, and that you can do that.
Sure.
But those were the reasons I went into psychiatry. I mean, I guess you could say psychiatry, I said you could practice it a zillion ways. A lot of this mental health stuff is stories. It's
Mhm.
not science.
Right.
It's just bonding with people, sharing stories and myths. It's a little bit of Easter Bunny, a little bit of Odysseus,
Mhm.
but it's fun and it feels therapeutic. I don't know if it is, but it feels therapeutic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but they're stories. So there's that side. There is a little bit of science in psychiatry where
Mhm.
you look at receptors that drugs hit and stuff like that. You try to do controlled experiments. It's tricky, but there are a lot of stories in psychiatry. Um, you talk about and you can if you sense it's the right moment, you can kid around with patients and try
Sure.
to make them laugh or let them be funny. So there is a connection there, but for me, it wasn't like a smooth transition.
Mhm.
It
And
was
so,
more, yeah, disconnected.
how many years did you practice just psychiatry before you got either pulled back into writing for comedy or inched your way back in?
Um, let me think. I think when I was in medical school, I was still kicking around some scripts with my longtime friend and partner, Gregg Kavet. But medical school was a lot of work, so that kind of went away.
Yeah.
During residency, I worked on a fun little project with another friend, a very talented, funny guy from college, also Arthur Phillips. We did like a fake documentary, NPR style podcast that was a lot of fun.
Hmm.
Um, the more recent, but like the big writing project didn't really happen until I was a psychiatrist in the Navy, and the pandemic hit, and Jerry Seinfeld, my former boss,
Hmm.
on that show and collaborator on B Movie, couldn't do stand up, so he was a little bored, and he was fascinated by the Kellogg's Pop Tart and always wanted to do something with that. So we resuscitated the B Movie team
Hmm.
and we kicked around an idea for a Pop Tart movie. I'd punch off work, and in the evenings we would Zoom. Me, Jerry, Barry Martyr, and Spike Ferriston. And that was like a year and a half of writing, maybe a
Hmm.
little less. And then we filmed that in summer of 2022, and it came out this May.
Right.
Um, that kind of just fell into my lap. That was a ton of fun. Love working with those guys. And then I've been kicking around other ideas, but I plan to right now I am between jobs and I plan to work for the VA in just about a month.
Got it. So we really, being a psychiatrist, other than studying to get up to speed, really didn't take away from your comedy career, and you had it going at some degree, and now you're. It seems like you're doing both.
A little of both. Yeah, I like the predictability of psychiatry. I like talking to patients and I like practicing evidence-informed conservative psychiatry and
Sure.
it's interesting and rewarding. I like working with the military population and veterans. So yeah, I've got a couple of irons in the fire.